Mugen TV Game Reviews.
A game that has never seen the light of day from the East for over a decade had finally made its way into the collection of Mana, but Square Enix didn't stop there. They decided to remake this game for a modern generation. So, the question is, does it live up to the cult status as one of the best JRPGs of the 90s? And does it appeal to a new audience who may have never heard of Trials of Mana? Well, we're about to find out. Unlike Square Enix's previous attempt at remaking Secret of Mana, which was released 2 years ago on the PS4, PS Vita, and PC, they decided to increase the budget of production of Trials of Mana to deliver a different aesthetic compared to its NES predecessor. This game truly is a remake. They were able to capture and maintain the look and feel of the original while providing a fresh but familiar experience for returning fans and something of an introduction for newcomers to the Mana franchise. Instead of sticking to the top-down perspective that was a staple of the original game in the remake of Secret of Mana, Square Enix decided to go with a fully realized 3D world to explore. Familiar locations and story set pieces are intact, but realized with cinematic cutscenes and voiceovers. The characters are bright and colorful, which reflects the art direction of the original SNES version back in the day. I know many of you wondering which version of the game should you invest in. It's all a matter of preference. I own both the PS4 and Nintendo Switch version of the game. The Nintendo Switch version runs at 30 frames per second and sometimes dip occasionally to 25 to 20 frames depending on how much action is happening on the screen at once. The Switch version also has added bloom effect over textures, but for a much smoother experience you can go for the PC and PS4 version. It runs at a smooth 60 frames per second and looks simply gorgeous. But if visuals and frames per second isn't a worry for you and you love convenience of playing this anywhere on the go, then grab the Nintendo Switch version. I enjoy both versions of the game equally. How about the music? The soundtrack is simply amazing. The developers were able to maintain the charm of the SNES tracks while updating them with better instruments. They decided to not go overboard with their remix decisions this time around, which is a good thing because the Secret of Mana Remake soundtrack was a bit of a hit or miss. But in Trials of Mana, you can switch between the original and remix versions of the soundtrack, and you can't go wrong with either of them, honestly. Now, as for the voice acting, the English dub is hit or miss. It's pretty much more it has to do with the direction of the script rather than the actors themselves, but oh boy, some of these sequences are downright hilarious.
Take me with you, then we can all make her pay. She's gonna get it.
Now, if you don't like the English dub, you can also switch to the Japanese version if you want to. I decided to keep the English dub because it's not that bad. I've heard worse. What makes Trials of Mana so unique, especially back in the 90s, was the fact is that you were able to choose between 6 different heroes. Each hero has their own storyline and will determine what end boss and dungeon you will encounter during the final battle. The catch to this gameplay mechanic is that you only can choose 3 out of the 6. You will encounter the remaining 3 heroes as you progress through the story, but they will not join your party. You are able to choose 2 companions to accompany your hero. Once you start the game, the story will follow your hero and eventually you will encounter your companions. What this remake does differently than the original is once you encounter a companion, you are able to play their backstory or skip it and allow the game to summarize their journey leading up to them meeting your main hero. This gameplay mechanic encourages also multiple playthroughs to get the entire story and see the game from a different perspective depending on who you select as your main hero. Not only that, each hero comes with their own stats, which allows players to think about what party is best for their playthrough. Even though all 6 characters have their own storyline unique to them, each of them tie into each other depending on the villain that they are associated with. Duran and Angela are enemies with the Crimson Wizard. Hawkeye and Reyes has a burning hatred for Belladonna. Kevin and Charlotte must stop Gormod, a fiend who used dark magic to take a hold of their loved ones. And in Trials of Mana Remake, The combat has also changed to a much more fast-paced action RPG experience. No longer does the player has to wait for stamina to rebuild in order to strike one at a time. Players are freely able to attack using a combination of light and heavy attacks. Also, this remake allows players to roll in order to evade enemies' attacks. Not only that, there's a jump button which allows you to jump onto platforms, which was never possible in the original. This is where the heart of Trials of Mana Remake shines the most. Gameplay is simple but addictive. To some, this can be seen as too repetitive. The game's combat is simple within the first 5 hours or so, until you encounter your first Mana Stone and is able to switch your character's classes. This is where the game's combat begins to open up much more. Remember, I said that picking a team is crucial in this game, and the class system is wide. Each character has 2 paths they can go from on the skill tree. You have light and dark class. These classes has their own abilities and stats, so choose wisely. Speaking of classes, you are able to use skill points to learn new abilities, so you can create your own party builds to suit your playstyle. There are a ton of guides online to explain each class and their traits, so if you're looking for a more thorough build and effective party, then I suggest you go look them up. Now, level 3 class requires an item that you must get from RNG drops from enemies or find in treasure boxes and then plant them in the pot. So, good luck. Now, some people may find this as an issue, but I must make this known that there isn't any kind of side quest in this game. The story progression is linear and you pretty much run from point A to point B, but the game makes up for it by making the maps branch into multiple paths and encourages you to fully explore them. Another added feature is the little cactus who grants you special perks if you find them hidden amongst the map. Now, I highly suggest you seek them out because some of the perks are very useful throughout the game. Another issue you might have is how easy the game is. I suggest you start the game on hard mode. Even then, I didn't find myself losing at all. I managed to get quite a few close calls, but nothing extremely hard where I had to rethink my approach to an encounter. Lastly, there are post-game dungeons and bosses that tie into each character's backstory. But one note I don't want to forget too is sometimes that your party member's AI can be quite a bit wonky, or your partner's AI can run into enemy attacks, area effects, and it can pretty much cause you a battle if you're not too careful. But you can readjust your AI by going through the party customization system to frequently change here and there, but there's no gambit system compared to like Final Fantasy 12. But once you complete that, you will gain access to a new game plus. So if you're a completionist, you will also find yourself enjoying your time running through this game if you decide to do a new game plus in the post-game content. Now, like most Mana games of the time, it was never really about the story. It was more about the gameplay and the journey within itself. But depending on what characters you pick, you will have a story that will tie into 1 or 3 villains. My first playthrough was with Duran, a knight of the Hero King, who had to take on the mantle of his father Loki, the Gold Hero. After his father sacrificed himself against the Dark Lord, Duran decided to follow in his father's footsteps. But one night, the Crimson Wizard has shown up and defeated Duran. It bruised his ego, and since then, he set forth to get stronger in order to stop the Crimson Wizard on his next encounter. While he journeys to become stronger, he meets Angela, a mage who was about to be offered as a sacrifice by her mother, who was also under influence of the Crimson Wizard. By pairing these two characters together, you can get a bit of a full story of the Crimson Wizard. The main plot device that ties all 6 characters together is the Mana Sword itself. No matter which hero you select, it will eventually lead you to the Mana Sword, and each character has their own reasons for attaining the Sacred Blade. With that being said, Trials of Mana is truly a remake in name and essence, and if you are into a quick pick up and play JRPG that has a bit of depth, then I advise you to go give the game a try. The game may be a little too faithful to some, and its charm may not have the same appeal to newcomers in the Mana series. Despite some of the horrible voice acting, linear gameplay, and oftentimes easy combat and boss encounters, there's still enough here to keep you busy with multiple playthrough, party builds, and post-game content. I give this game an 8 out of 10. I advise you go check out my playlist for my other reviews, and also hit the bell to be notified for future reviews to come. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit that thumbs up button if you like the video. It helps me in the algorithm. This is MUGENLORD signing off. See you Game Fiends later. Peace out.